Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Kip Givens here, your whiskey tour guide, and we are set for another episode of Toast to History. Tonight, I'm going to look at a little bit of the origination of American whiskey, but more specifically, I want to look at the migration from Europe to the Americas and this beginning of American whiskey and where we kind of put that in our history and where we put that in a place in our society at the time. Now, back in the day, Europe, many of the countries of Europe operated under a state religion, meaning that if you were going to practice a religion, you had to believe and practice only what the state ordained or sponsored. So because of that, there was a lot of migration that began to the Americas for religious freedom so that they could practice the religion of their choice. Also, the Americas became a place where prisoners were sent, so they got them out of their own country and came here. But what happened is this grand melting pot began to grow as a place of experience and evolution into the possibility and a new life for many people. And obviously, they didn't come here to distill whiskey, but they did bring with them the art of distillation that they understood, especially those Irish and Scots that came over. They were farmers. They were looking for, not only their religious freedom, but they were looking maybe for a parcel of land, a place where they could set up their own family and farm and begin to create a legacy, have some freedom, have some financial freedom, have some opportunity. And that's where our story begins in America. I'm going to read you a little bit from my book, shameless plug here. Sweet Drams Are Made of These, available on Amazon. And the migration kind of to the Americas really began in 1492 with Columbus's voyage to the Americas, which at that time really was the Bahamas and the Cuba area. From about 1492 to 1820, more than 2.5 million people migrated from Europe to the Americas. Now, encyclopedia.com says that this happened in 3 phases. Phase 1, from around that 1492 Columbus voyage to about 1580, consisted of around 2,000 people annually, mostly Spanish and Portuguese. Then phase 2, 1640 to 1760, we see about 1.3 million people migrate from Europe to the Americas, mostly British, Swiss, French, and German. And then that final stage from 1760 to 1820, once again dominated by the British to North America and the United States. And this is budding and leading right up into that Revolutionary War era. Now, there's a quote here by Roderick Gordon. He was a Scot who immigrated to Virginia, and he confided in his brother in 1734, and he says, quote, "Pity it is that thousands of my country people should stay starving at home when they may live here in peace and plenty, as a great many who have been transported for a punishment have found pleasure, profit, and ease, and would rather undergo any hardship than be forced back to their own country." Now, of course, a lot of them came, and in New York, we had a lot of tobacco farms. So a lot of immigrants came as indentured servants to work on those tobacco farms. And then in 1717, the English Parliament, then they legalized that transportation from prisoners to the Americas, specifically to Virginia and Maryland. And so over the next 60 years or so, Scots, Irish, and Germans, due to varying circumstances or displeasures, came to the Americas. Now, there was no 24-hour news cycle. There was no TV. There wasn't CNN and Fox. There wasn't Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. No, when people wanted to have any type of engagement, they had to actually get together. So in the old world, we had pubs. People would go to the pub for not only their drink, but just to gather and hang out and talk. And in the early stages of the American story, even pre-Revolutionary War, we began to set up in these towns taverns, the town tavern, right? And people would go there for their favorite drink, hopefully a nice dram of whiskey, but it was also an ale, a nice pint. But in that, they would discuss everything from just the local town gossip all the way to the forbidden things that we think of today as religion and politics. They would actually discuss and engage in life things. The tavern was that place. A little later on in our history, once the Revolutionary War started, we began migrating westward, and then once that's over, we continue all the way into California, or continue that full migration. We see the saloon, right? Everybody here has probably seen a TV show or a movie, a Western, right? Where the saloon is the centerpiece of a given town. In fact, during the migration westward, and that exploration trail, they would usually have a trail mapped out that they'd go with their horses and their carriages and all that stuff. And saloons would actually find a spot on the trail and pop up their tent, their structure, and be a spot where people could stop and rest, have a drink, and engage in these conversations. And I feel like that's something we're missing deeply today in our 21st century Western society. Now, we've had some phases that have shown that. 80s and 90s, the 1980s, 1990s, we see, think of the barber shop, right? It wasn't a place where you just went in to get your hair cut. You could walk into one of those barber shops and there's guys in the corner playing checkers, right? They're playing chess. There was engagement. It was a place to hang out. A little bit later now, we see the coffee shop. I mean, if you live in any type of an urban or metropolitan area, there's not a coffee shop for you to choose to go to. There are multiple coffee shops. And I know today we have a lot of the drive-through situations and things like that, but there are still coffee shops with seating. And they're not only a place where people go just to get their cup of joe, right? They go for engagement. Business is held there. Oh, I need a meeting with somebody. Hey, let's meet down at the local coffee shop. Book clubs meet there, right? It's this place of engagement. The cigar shop is another example. I could walk into a cigar shop today, grab a cigar, grab a nice drink, sit down, and within a few minutes, engage in a conversation with someone, because there seems to be camaraderie, there seems to be safety, and then nothing is off limits. We can talk about not only the happenings of the day, but we can talk about religion, politics, life. I've had some seriously deep and poignant conversations sitting around a cigar shop with a dram of whiskey and a cigar, and we've gone deep. And it's something that I feel like we're lacking today. One of my favorite things about whiskey, and I know everybody's probably had a bad experience. People talk about their college experience, and they had their wild turkey or whatever, and they got drunk and so, whiskey. But for most adults, this dram right here represents not something that we're trying to do to get drunk, to lose ourselves, to wash away all of our troubles. It's something that we enjoy, and it's best enjoyed in the company of friends. And in that setting, whether it be at the saloon, the tavern, the bar, or the barbecue, there is something about those settings where we kind of let our guards down and we engage in actual, real conversation. And I think it's healthy, and I think it's great. And it's one of my favorite things about the world of whiskey as opposed to other alcoholic spirits, is that it does, to me, invite fellowship. It invites friendship. It invites conversation. And I feel like that is something that we could use a lot more of in our current day. And so for tonight's history lesson, I really want to just bring that in and then bring us back, right? What do they say? The people who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Let's get back to the place where we can enjoy a nice adult beverage in the company of friends, neighbors, maybe people we've never met before. But that there's this place where we can engage in real life conversation. The conversations that actually matter in life. The conversations that go deep and are personal. Did you know that when the tavern and the saloon first began in America, as the centerpiece, that saloon keeper was, I mean, we think of it today, the bartender, right? The bartender, your local bartender probably knows more about the people in his community than most people would want to know. Because we get a drink and we start unloading on the bartender. Do you know that in the origination of the saloon and the tavern and all these things, that the barkeeper, the saloon keep, was also the local pastor? Counseling happened at the saloon. Those things are healthy because they engage us in real life conversations. So today, take a moment. Let's not just, and I know the irony that I'm on social media, let's not just watch our social media flipping, listen to all the reviews or all of this or all the talking heads or all the content creators. But let's find those places where we can go enjoy a beverage and engage in real life. I think we would see some dramatic changes in our cultural DNA, our cultural makeup, if we would make room once again for what took place historically in the old saloon. So that's my toast to history tonight. I hope you guys have a great one. We'll see you next time. Cheers.